Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Raptor Queens podcast, the first and, for the time being, only all-women-led podcast covering the Toronto Raptors. My name is Sarah Khalil. Joining me today are my other Queens of the North, Sonali Sharma, Allison Hope, and Essie Magic. This is our first episode of 2020. Happy New Year, everyone. I want to start by saying thank you to Samson Folk on the Raptors Republic podcast for your kind shout out to our podcast last week. Samson, thanks for encouraging your listeners to check us out and for acknowledging that women in sports media is an underserved market with a lot of room for growth. Our podcast may be the first women-led Raptors podcast, but like you, we hope it is the first of many. Let's move to a recap of the Raptors' record this week. Only 2 games back-to-back against the Portland Trailblazers and the Charlotte Hornets. Both games were extremely close. The Raptors led for all except 37 seconds of the game against Portland. Portland taking the lead late in the game and the win with the game-winning shot by Carmelo Anthony. And then against Charlotte, the Raptors won in overtime, riding a strong performance from rookie Terrence Davis II and Serge Ibaka, who's been averaging a double-double, 18.2 points and 11.2 rebounds over the last 6 games. Looking back over the last 11 games, the Raptors have gone 6-5 since Pascal Siakam, Marc Gasol, and Norman Powell went out with injuries on December 18th against Detroit. And in Brooklyn this past Saturday, Fred VanVleet, who may have returned a bit too early from a previous injury in December, pulled his hamstring and was out of the lineup against Portland and Charlotte, which means the Raptors were playing without 4 of their top 7 players this week. Story of the season, the Raptors have lost 138 man games to injury this season, which is the 3rd most in the league, yet they still hold the number 4 spot in an extremely competitive Eastern Conference and have the 9th best record in the NBA. In case anyone forgot, or if any of you are new Raptors fans, at the beginning of the season, many people were predicting the Raptors would finish no higher than 5th in the East after the departure of Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. But not only are these guys gone, but at least 2 of the Raptors' top players have been injured in 21 out of 38 games, and yet still the Raptors pull out win after win, and they're competitive in every game. So while the story has been injuries this year, it has been a lot more than that. It's been next man up. And as Kyle Lowry says, it's about not giving an F and just going out there and doing the work. In theory, it only gets better from here. Sharpshooter Matt Thomas returned to the lineup against Portland, and Norman Powell is projected to return on Sunday, and Pascal Siakam could be back as early as next week. How good is a fully healthy Raptors team? Literally no one knows, but there's reason to be optimistic. So let's take a look at the games this week. We'll start with Essie. What stood out to you this week?
Yeah, very interesting week. I'm very proud of our guys, that next man up mentality and playing, their heart out there despite all the injuries, playing higher minutes than normal. I think, Patrick McCaw and Kyle Lowry have gone into the 40-minute minutes mark per game. And so definitely really proud of them. Some other things that stood out to me as well is, Terrence Davis's response, TD2, his response to Nick Nurse's criticism of him. And I just want to say that I just think he's so mature for his age. I mean, he's a rookie, he's young, and he took the challenge. In the Charlotte game, he had 23 points, 50% from the field, even 11 rebounds for a small guy like him. A certain other player might have responded much differently to that. And so the fact that he came out like that and he got a start. And I also want to praise Nick Nurse for kind of trying to help him get in a rhythm. He definitely helped that. And you could tell right away from the Charlotte game, coming out, shooting threes, being clutch, even in overtime. So that definitely stood out to me a lot. And of course, Serge Ibaka's double-doubles. And overall, just really proud of our guys, seeing, Matt Thomas come back and how O'Shea Brissett's been playing, making threes. I mean, he's a G leaguer, making, his threes and getting put backs, and he's very athletic as well. So overall, very, very happy with this week. There are a couple other things that I will say when we get to our Court Jester segment.
Okay, well, looking forward to that. Allison, what were some of the highlights of the week for you?
Well, I was a little bit concerned to see Kyle's minutes, but again, I think Nick Nurse is between a rock and a hard place because we really don't have a lot of other options. Fred at this point can't come back too soon. And I guess from what we're hearing, it's not going to be soon. So I'm not sure how Nick Nurse is going to manage his minutes, or if he can. The other thing was Serge. The guy is just playing amazing ball. I think it's either 7 or 8 games now, averaging a double-double. So this guy has stepped up. He's accepted a different role. He's a consummate professional. He's a fun guy. You can't not love Serge. And I guess the other thing that surprised me, I was saying to you guys before we started, Makaha in the game against Charlotte, those 11 assists, I did not see that coming. And this is the time that I wish I had more time to watch college ball, because I don't have a feel for what he was like as a college player. And I didn't see enough of him in Golden State to realize that he had the potential to be to play the role of a creator. I was really quite impressed with that game. So I think all in all, I was hugely disappointed with the game. I've been a Carmelo Anthony fan. He's one of those players that for some reason just irritates me. So for us to lose on a shot with 3 seconds left to him, by him, that kind of burned me. We could have been 3-0 this week, but on we go.
Yeah, that was a really heartbreaking loss. Heartbreaking actually might be a bit of an overstatement, but the experience of leading for the entire game and then losing at this, because of one shot after a breakdown in offense on the fourth quarter, that was to me reminiscent of the Raptors of old, when they would lose leads late in the game. And I remember that I used to be very nervous when the Raptors were leading in the fourth. And this was the first time this season that I was reminded of years past and how it used to be watching the Raptors. And at the same time, I was confident they could have pulled off the win. They were so close, and yeah, it just didn't happen. Essie, it looked like you wanted to respond to Allison. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of, a similar thing to what you just said. This game just really brought out all the insecurities I have about the Raptors. And I know that they're injured, but I feel like even the injured players that come back, I don't know if it's going to help this, but seeing Carmelo and Dame Lillard, be so clutch and be closers. And that's my biggest security about the Raptors right now, is they don't have a closer. They don't have, that in the fourth quarter, who you're going to go to in a clutch moment. It's but it's going to be Kyle Lowry. It's going to be Siakam. We might try Norman Powell, so it's kind of it just brought out all my insecurities about the Raptors. So I would say that's why it hurt more about how we lost, not so much that it was a loss. I will say though, about Carmelo, I am very proud of him. He was vintage Carmelo in that game. And I do want to give credit there. He had 28 points, I believe. He was 10 of 17. He was showing why he deserves to be in this league. And considering all the controversy about him not getting on a team, I thought he did phenomenal. And he also had a clutch shot against us, similar to that pull-up jumper he had. I believe it was in 2010. And it specifically was against the Raptors. It looked very similar. Somebody cut the two on top of each other. And I was just wow, this was vintage Carmelo. And so that was nice to see, even though Allison, you don't like him.
Well, no, I don't, but there is definitely a place for him in the league. He's a very magnetic player on the offense. He doesn't play defense. But sure, I'm glad he's back in the league. It's a nice story.
Yeah, Kyle said he was really happy to see Carmelo back in the league. I wonder if he still thought so after that game-winning shot against the Raptors. But knowing Kyle, he didn't blame Carmelo. He just kind of thought about what the Raptors could have done differently. Sonali, what was your take on the last few games?
Well, you guys have pretty much covered everything, but yeah, I kind of have to agree with Allison. I'm always a Pat McCaw defender, because we tend to hear a lot about what his value is and the sheer volume of minutes he's been on the court for. But that game against the Hornets and just how good he was, and yeah, the 11 assists and that really took me by surprise. And I think he was on the court for about 42 or 43 minutes that game. And then the other thing that Sarah, you hit the nail on the head in terms of the Portland game. I had a lot of anxiety come up as well too, and a lot of trauma from the past with respect to that one. But then it was just like, you know, Terrence Davis was not good in that game. But as you said in the beginning of our recording, that Hornets game, he had 23 points and 11 rebounds. And that was, I think, within 12 minutes of him playing. I think that's sort of what I had. Maybe I could be wrong on that.
He had 13 points in the first quarter.
That's right, 13 points in the first quarter. And then also, I mean, even though we lost the Portland Trailblazers game, one of the things I noticed about Chris Boucher, whose birthday it is today, and happy birthday to Chris Boucher, is he had a phenomenal game. He had 9 rebounds, and I think he had 3 blocks that game. And he is just, his limbs, like I think somebody had recently written somewhere, I think it was a tweet, he's just a flurry of limbs. Like he has so much energy and he's so versatile, and I'm just really excited to see what Boucher is going to be bringing to the court in the next few games. So yeah.
I want to say about Boucher, and I'll never forget this because it was when we were playing the Lakers in LA. And I remember I said to my brother before the game, I was just like, it was right after the injuries had happened. And this was the first game, like this Rondé and all of them were about to prove themselves in this Lakers game. And I remember I said to my brother, I was like, oh gosh, Chris Boucher is going to be thrown around like a rag doll.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget how stupid I felt in the games, the consecutive games that happened after that, where he's like, even though he's super skinny, like when you look at him, he does not look like he's going to be a strong player, but he's much stronger than he looks. And apparently he's made a goal to put on like 10 to 15 pounds per summer. So I just want to say that he is definitely not like what he looks at all. He's quite strong, and I'm really impressed. He stepped up in the fourth, that Portland game, like you said, and man, anyway, that was my Chris Boucher story.
Yeah, that's a great story. I mean, being 6'9" in general, I don't know how I would function in life. Like,
you know, one of the things that stood out to me, and it has over the entire season really, is the strength of the Raptors defense. I just watching all of our bench players step up and see how quickly they can move, like Oshae Brissett, his lateral movement, even Pat McCaw, even if you aren't his biggest fan, he's intelligent on defense, and the lateral movement and the wing defense that the Raptors are capable of playing is tough and consistent every single game. But Essie, to your point, the question, and I think it's been a question from the beginning, and might be one of the questions that Masai is asking as we near the trade deadline, is how consistent is the Raptors offense, and who can we count on come playoff time to generate offense when it really matters and in clutch plays? You know, to go 6 or 7 possessions in the fourth quarter without scoring, that's what we saw happen a couple times this week. And where the offense comes from is we never really know. So against Portland, we saw Chris Boucher step up and generate some offense, but Nick Nurse chose not to keep him in the game at the end of the game. He wasn't a closing player. And
oh, sorry. I was just going to say, and honestly, like, do we really want to see, like, sorry, I'm just thinking about it in my head. Do we really want to see Rondé Hollis-Jefferson being the one to drive in the dying minutes in that Portland game? He was like driving a couple times. I'm like, why is Rondé Hollis-Jefferson like the one who's doing this? And so it was just, again, it just really brought out those fears of, oh my gosh, we don't have a closer. I mean, it probably would have been Siakam or something if he wasn't injured, but even Siakam is still not like, I mean, I love the guy, but he's still not, you know, the level we need in terms of that fourth quarter clutch guy. So yeah, it was written all over that game.
Yeah, we'll be curious to see to see Pascal grow into that role, and I don't know, I'm just very curious to see what the Raptors actually look like healthy, especially offensively, and especially in clutch game time.
It's also hard too because every time they come back from injury, there's like a transition period. So even though we had that brief string of games where they were all healthy, it's like they weren't playing. Remember, it was like against the Clippers. They weren't playing that well. And they were still, adapting to Serge and Kyle being back. So then now I'm thinking, oh, even when they all come back, what are they going to be like? You know what I mean? And then, so anyway, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and actually, I'd like to get each of your takes on this, because it's a question I've been wondering as the trade deadline approaches. Would you, if you're Masai, would you keep the Raptors team as it is, even though you don't know what they're like healthy, because you actually don't? Would you trust that, given how it's gone with the team and all the injuries that it's had so far, the way that this team has been playing, the heart that it's been playing with, and knowing that you have some outstanding talent returning to your team, would you keep the team as it is and go for the championship as is? Or would you make a trade? And if you are making the trade, what are you trading for? Not necessarily who, but what piece are you trading for to complete the Raptors team and contend for a championship? That's the question I'm putting to each of you. Hopefully I didn't catch you by surprise. Allison.
That's a really good question. We know the Raptors organization is like notoriously secretive, so I don't think there's any rumors that I've seen. I tend to look at Hoops Hype quite a bit for my source of rumors, and I haven't seen anything. So if I was going to do something, it'll be a bombshell. I tend to think that he'll stand pat. I can't see him acquiring a piece to make a run. I just wonder if Ibaka is going to go, though, and maybe he'll get some young prospect for him. Just get something out of the asset. But I really don't have a feel for what's going to happen. I don't think we have the ability to make a deep playoff run. I can't see us getting to the Eastern Conference Final. So, yeah, I don't know.
What do you think is missing that makes us not get to the Eastern Conference Final? I disagree. I think we're going to the finals, but I'm also super biased.
Well, Sarah, I hope you're right. I fervently hope I'm wrong. What do we need? We probably need another 3-point shooter. The same thing that every other playoff team is looking for.
Okay. Thanks for your take. Sonali.
I agree with Allison, RE, the 3-point shooter. I also don't agree with her regarding the Eastern Conference Final comment. I'm with you as well too, Sarah. I'm an eternal optimist. Initially, I did think Ibaka might go, but the more and more I think about it, I don't think we're losing Serge. I don't think we're trading Serge yet. I think it's going to stay the way that it is, to be honest with you.
You're going with no trades?
No trades.
Okay. Essie?
So let me get this straight. So you guys think the current construction of the team can get to the NBA Finals, not the Eastern Conference Finals, the NBA Finals? The NBA Finals?
I do. I sincerely do think so.
I don't.
Nope.
I think we need a trade for sure. And I think that I would like to see somebody like a Drew Holiday or somebody be brought into the team. We need another shot creator. I just do not think this team can get to the NBA Finals. If we do get the furthest we can get to, I think, is the Eastern Conference Finals, and that is our ceiling. That is if everything goes right, we get a lucky bounce. I just don't think that, and honestly, teams constructed like this don't tend to go that far. The last team that did it was the 04 Pistons, but that is a rarity. So not saying we can't do it in a never say never sense, but I just think that we need another shot creator, somebody who can maybe do a pull-up mid-range jumper type player, in the dying seconds when the shot clock's running down. Remember, too, in the playoffs, the game becomes a lot more half court, and the Raptors are not a good half court offense team. Sorry to say. So keeping that in mind, if we don't get another, ISO scorer, someone who can create their own shot. It doesn't have to be like a superstar, even just like an all-star or borderline all-star, you know, somebody who we can depend on in, you know, the dying seconds of a shot clock when the defense gets really tight in the playoffs to just pull up and make something at the end of the shot clock, or in the fourth quarter when there's only a couple seconds left, or those last 2 minutes when it gets really tense. So anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
I think I'm closer to Allison's take than you and than Sonali and Sarah.
Okay, to be clear, what I said is I think the Raptors are going to the finals. I didn't necessarily say this team is going to the finals.
Oh my gosh.
It's true. I'm the only one.
Okay, that said, Essie, who would you give up?
Okay, so that's where it gets a little trickier because, I mean, that's where the emotional side comes in.
I don't know. For me, I'm not up to speed on salary caps and the who's making what. So when I say who would you give up, if you actually know who you could give up or what this trade would look like financially, then you're well beyond me. I just more mean if you give up anybody and we weren't talking about salary caps, etc., who would you give up?
So I think to match the salaries, and I'll be honest, I'm not as 100% on this either, but to match the salaries, I think one of the big men would have to go. Between Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, salary-wise. But in terms of players on the team, like if we're talking regardless of salary, players on the team that I could see being put in some sort of package, I could see Norman Powell being put in a package. I can see Patrick McCaw, Sonali being put in a package, and one of the big men, like I said, with a pick or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, you know, one of the great things that has emerged from all of the injuries is that the Raptors have had a chance, and Masai has essentially had a chance to showcase all of the talent from the upcoming players. And so there may be teams that are looking at the Raptors bench and thinking, man, this is exactly the type of player we need. This is the type of player we want to develop as we move forward. And so, you know, I think we have a unique opportunity in that there may be more to offer than we originally thought or that anyone really knew. So that's interesting. So I guess I have to answer my own question now. If I was Masai, would I make a trade or would I keep the team? Whew. And honestly, what would I do? If I was Masai, because he's really smart and clever, I would trade for something that nobody saw coming. And that's my way of saying I have absolutely no idea what I would actually do. But I do think there would be a trade. I think it would be for somebody who had the same work ethic that we've seen from the Raptors, and that was your clutch offensive player. I might also be considering a trade for somebody who's excellent on the boards, just to make up some of the rebounding differential that the Raptors experience. But I have a lot of confidence and faith in the Raptors defense and less confidence and faith in the clutch offense. So that's probably where I would pull the trigger. Okay. In a future podcast, as we move closer to the playoffs, we will do actual playoff predictions instead of just heart-based, absolutely, we're going to repeat proclamations, and we'll go from there. All right. Anyone else have anything that they want to say about this week's games before we move on to some of our next segments?
No.
Oh, I do. I just want to say that it should have been a sign when Matt Thomas had the air ball that the game wasn't going to go well.
A bad omen.
That was actually truly hilarious. I mean, I felt bad that I laughed as hard as I did, but I was like, because I came into the game like, yeah, Matt Thomas with his 3-point shooting, he's gonna break all the zone defenses. He's gonna just be our like a 3-point shooting savior because our percentage has been so low over the last little bit. Then he comes in, takes the 3, and just airballs it, and I just couldn't stop laughing. I thought that was
Oh my God, that was shades of Jason Capono. I'm sure you guys remember him, our 3-point specialist. Oh boy.
So funny. Okay, so let's move on then to my favorite segment. This week's King of the North. Who was a player that really stood out to you as, well, they just stood out this week's King of the North? Let's start with Sonali.
Okay, so my King of the North actually hasn't been playing, and it's Norman Powell. And the reason why it's Norman Powell is because you need to understand the grind. So I don't know if any of you guys read this Sportsnet's article that's been circulating the last couple of days, but apparently after the horrible game that Terrence Davis had against the Trailblazers, Norman Powell got together with him and he actually he did a personal filming with a film day with Terrence Davis. And I was talking to Sarah about this earlier on before the recording as well too, and it was just talking about mentorship within the team. And I had the opportunity to go see the Thunder game in Toronto. And what I noticed was, even as there was timeouts and as there was like the halftime period, like all three of those players that were out with injuries, Norman, Marc Gasol, and Siakam, they were all out there. They were rooting for their teammates. And I think behind the scenes, they've really been working with these guys and sort of figuring out strategies and seeing what's happening on the court. And I think Norman Powell and the Terrence Davis relationship is just a really special one. And we could see it. I mean, Portland was horrible, but then all of a sudden he has the game against the Nets and the Hornets, and he does a spectacular job. So for me, Norman Powell is my King of the week.
Okay, well, here's hoping that Norman Powell is coaching Terrence Davis in the consistency that Norman Powell actually was showing before, the ups and downs that we sometimes saw from the previous version of Norman Powell. So, yeah.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And then OG Anunoby is gonna be the new Kawhi. You just watch.
I actually was wondering if maybe Norm was trying to adopt a Kawhi persona, like during the games. He's just like straight face, not smiling. Even when the Raptors had that major comeback and Fred VanVleet is like clapping his hands and he's like, I'm so excited. And Norm's sitting next to him just stone cold. Anyway, an interesting take on this week's segment, Sonali. Okay, SD, King of the North.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if we want Terrence Davis to be everything like Norman Powell with those inconsistencies. But I do applaud definitely that sort of mentorship and leadership. Serge has been doing it a lot too. I know that TD2 has mentioned that about Serge as well. And speaking of Serge, he is my King of the North. I just think he's just been phenomenal. I think it's almost like we talked about him already, so I don't have to explain it, but I will remind everyone he's had 7 consecutive double-doubles. Mm-hmm. He's had a lot of clutch plays. He caught that terrible pass from Terrence Davis in overtime in the Hornets game. And so I was just like, and very fitting after he had grabbed the jersey in that play as well. So I thought it was nice how he like made up for it. But yeah, he's just been phenomenal. He's been playing so hard since all these injuries came, and you can just see him making the effort to grab those rebounds and making sure that we give ourselves a fair chance with getting enough possession. So yeah, Serge Ibaka is my King of the North.
Excellent. All right, Allison, over to you.
I'm going to go with Serge as well. I love the guy and just the numbers he's put up this week, and to Essie's point. So I'll just keep it brief here. Serge Ibaka.
Okay, great. And I'm going to go with Terrence Davis II. And my reason for that is because of how he handled the criticism from Nick Nurse. In case you don't know, what happened is in Portland, Terrence played 8 minutes, and Nick Nurse after the game said that was probably 5 minutes too many. And it was a pretty public takedown of Terrence's performance in that game. And then, like we said, the next game, he comes back, he's put in the position of starter. He scores 23 points, has 11 rebounds, and is clutch in overtime. And what I really want to acknowledge is that, to hear that kind of criticism and to decide that you're going to use that to make you better, and then immediately doing so, that is pretty kingly, in my opinion. So that's my take on that one.
Especially when you have the mentorship of Norman Powell.
Thanks, Sonali. Way to bring that home. Okay, so now moving on to our next segment, which is our court jester. Perhaps someone who we wonder what happened or what is going on with that player. And Essie, you said you had something to say about this, so we're going to start with you.
Okay, so I will say this is a risky choice, but I'm a woman of risk. So I'm going to say that my court jester of the week is going to be Kyle Lowry. And I just looked at Sarah's face. Oh my gosh. And it's for a very specific reason. And it's because of his field goal percentage. He's shot 30% from the field every single game this week. And I know he's our team leader, but if we're looking at it objectively, we cannot have him shooting 30%, in the long term. Of course, he does amazing at other things. When he's on the floor, the team was, for example, against the Hornets, the whole starting lineup was plus, and the bench was minus. But I just got to hold him accountable. The 30%, it's not cutting it for me, Kyle. So, get your field goal percentage up.
Step up, Kyle, says Essie. All right. Sonali, your jester.
I guess for me, yeah, it's definitely, I know I'm a Pat McCaw supporter, but he was definitely my jester of the week. Not enough shots, dude. He's just on the court for too long, and I just don't, I don't know. I've just had a really hard time watching him in that Brooklyn Nets game. So
you're like, get off the court.
No, it really was like, get off the court. At least with Malcolm Miller, I'm like, he's there. He's not disturbing anybody.
Okay, Allison.
Well, I'm normally quite decisive, but I really had trouble picking anybody this week. I did take note of Kyle's 25% three-point rate against Portland, which was pretty bad. And I think sometime one of the games I saw Stanley Johnson attempt a 20-footer, and I'm pretty sure that Nick Nurse wouldn't have been too impressed with that. And I can't really pick anybody this week. Just we're treading water with our injuries. Everybody's all in on defense. So I'm going to kind of wimp out and say, I can't really pick anybody.
No, that's not allowed. Say a name, damn it.
Stanley Johnson.
Awesome.
That's a good choice. Good choice.
So if I'm going just for the funniest moment, I would say Matt Thomas with his air ball. Or I would say Rondae Hollis Jefferson with the three that he took and the way he kicked out his leg. And I was like, what is that shot? Have you ever shot a basketball before? That's what it looked like to me when he took that 3-pointer. And even Nick Nurse was laughing. But probably if I'm just looking at overall, I would go Pat McCaw as my court jester. But there is something I want to say about that. So Nick Nurse seems really committed to Patrick McCaw having a breakthrough and being an NBA player. And where I'm looking is in the first two games against Brooklyn and against Portland, and actually all season, my experience with McCaw is that he's really just not confident with the ball, and that he just has this background thought that's running his game, which is it would be better if somebody else held the ball. And it'd be better if someone else shot the ball. And it stops him from taking shots that he should take. So his team is getting ready to get the rebound. They're positioning or jockeying for the offensive rebound, and he just doesn't take the shot. And so instead we get a turnover, or we get a 3-second violation in the key, because he's not doing what he should be doing and what he would be doing if he thought that he actually deserved to hold the ball. And then we see this, I thought we saw that play out in Portland as well, like clutch time, the last possession of the game, and he's so eager to get the ball out of his hands that he turns it over on a bounce pass to Kyle Lowry. And yet after the game, when Nick Nurse is asked about that, he just kind of laughs. And I feel like where Nick is coming from in this, and I'm totally speculating, it's just maybe what I would do. What I get from it is like, he's like, yeah, it's funny because now he can see how ludicrous it is that his confidence, that this lack of confidence in the way it's impacting his game. I hope he gets how much of an impact this lack of confidence is having. And then the next game, Pat comes out and has a +5. I think it might have been the only plus game he's had this season, 11 assists, and actually played really well. And I thought, especially in the first half against Charlotte, I saw the Raptors offense actually flow and have a rhythm for the first time like in a while since I've seen that kind of flow. So credit to Nick Nurse, and also, come on, McCaw, you got to have this breakthrough, or you got to get off the court. Essie, you look like you want to say something.
To McCaw's credit, though, the game where he did have the +5, it should have been higher, but he spent a lot of time on the floor with the bench, and not our usual bench, our G League bench. So that, I would say, that probably brought down his plus-minus a little. So to his credit there. And I think I get what you're saying in terms of maybe Nick Nurse is like, he has a soft spot for him, because I don't know if I have the story absolutely 100% correct, but I believe the way he left the Warriors was a little bit controversial, because they offered him a contract and he turned it down because he felt like he deserved more playing time or better. And then he had a period of time where nobody signed him. And then I believe it was the Cavs who picked him up. Yeah, the Cavs who picked him up, and then they waived him, and then the Raptors picked him up. So he's kind of had an up and down type of, moving from team to team. So maybe that's affected his confidence, unfortunately. I always feel bad for him when he gets blocked. Like, he got blocked quite a bit, actually, in the Portland game. So, yeah. Now we feel bad for him.
It's true. So I don't know if any of you guys have TikTok, but I was looking at some of the videos that Serge had posted, and he posted one very recently, like a couple of days ago, that was literally him zooming in on Pat McCaw's phone, and Pat McCaw had like an older iPhone, and he's looking at him, he's like, hey dude, you need to upgrade your phone, like, you get paid enough to you have like a real job, like get a fancier phone. And so
I saw that. It was funny.
It's sort of indicative of how, like, his confidence, right? Like, maybe he just doesn't believe.
It's affecting his phone choices.
That's a beautiful segment into our next segment. A beautiful segue into our next segment, Raptors Tea Time. Sonali, spill some tea. We got the Raptors 905 against the Erie Bay Hawks.
Well, I don't really have much to say about this. I think Essie is more versed in this, other than the fact that they won, and Norman was there, and Nurse was there, and Siakam was there as well too. So it's nice to see the love. Yeah, I mean, that's all I have to say about that game.
I think it was just a feel-good. It was a feel-good moment to see Matt Thomas make his debut in the 905 and Stanley Johnson too. Yeah, it was just it was a good game just to watch. It was entertaining. Like you said, Nick Nurse was there. Fred was there. It was Bobble Night. It was Fred VanVleet's Bobble Night, and Norm was there, and Pascal was there too in the back, encouraging people for the game. And he was on he had his courtside seat as well. Do you want to know what the game made me realize? I was like, maybe I should have gone to a 905 game. I mean, you can get courtside seats for like so cheap.
I was thinking the same thing too, and also it's refreshing to see Nick Nurse outside of a suit.
Yeah. Yeah, and his reaction to when like they had some good plays, it was very like Nick Nurse-esque, meme-like.
Yeah, I love that the Raptors have created a culture around their G League team where it's actually a place where you want to be and you want to hang out. That's pretty unique, and well done. Okay, next Raptors tea time. Kyle Lowry's post game interview after Charlotte. What was that?
It was so weird.
He was doing his hockey player impression. I thought it was so funny. It was like spot on.
Yeah, is that what he was doing? So I mean, here he is, and he's just, I don't know, the way he answered his questions, it was curt, it was odd. It was odd. That's my description of it. It was also funny.
Have you guys not seen how hockey players speak? That's how hockey players speak.
Yeah, they totally do. But some people also like said that they thought that he was actually trying to do an impression of TD2, but actually TD2 sounds like that. So I kind of like that interpretation better.
No, that is the worst interpretation I've ever heard. No, that's not what TD2 sounds like. They should get their ears checked.
Yeah, and well, after that interview, I feel like that interview belongs in maybe the Kyle Lowry Hall of Fame post-game interviews. But Kyle Lowry Hall of Fame generally, there was some, I don't know, some talk on Twitter about maybe this guy's not a Hall of Famer. Allison, I know you have opinions about that.
Oh, for sure. Like I said before, Sean Marion is one of the inductees on the list of potential inductees for this year's Hall of Fame class. So 4 All-Star appearances, 1 championship. So if Sean Marion is in, Kyle Lowry most definitely has to be in. And while I'm on the subject, NBA All-Star voting, everyone please go ahead and vote.
And I think you have like 10 votes, right? Like you get 10 chances.
I think it's unlimited.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Like
well, then
I think you can vote every day.
That's Sonalia's way of admitting that she hasn't been. So Allison, you can take that offline and let her know your opinion about that.
You guys want to hear something that I've been feeling guilty about?
Yes.
Uh-oh.
So when I did my all-star voting, I was like, so I voted for Pascal, obviously, and I voted for Kyle. But then there was Fred VanVleet. I didn't vote for him for 2 reasons. I just saw Sonali's face. Like, what the? So the first reason is probably the most petty reason, but I've been feeling guilty about it. So that's why I'm saying it, to like clear my conscience. Because I was thinking, I was like, if he gets made an all-star, it's going to be that much harder for the Raptors to retain him in free agency because he's going to want more money. It's so bad. But that's why I didn't vote for him. And then the second thing that justified it in my head, I was like, well, the Raptors, I just feel like they shouldn't have 3 all-stars. I feel like that should be like, you have to be the number 1 team in your conference to have 3 all-stars in the game. I just felt like we don't deserve it, you know? So that was probably the more reasonable reason. But anyway, that was just on my conscience that I didn't vote for Fred VanVleet.
Do you feel better now?
I do. Letting it out. I do feel better.
Excellent. This is part podcast, part confession. That's what our podcast is about. So thanks, Essie. All right. So then the next thing, let's move to around the league. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a good segue here, but the Eastern Conference generally, how is it shaping up? Like I mentioned, the Raptors are 4th right now. The really only, I guess, clear number 1 team is Milwaukee's. Spots 2 through 6 are very, very tight at the moment. So thoughts on the Eastern Conference, Allison?
I've got to say, I'm very surprised by Indiana and how well they've played without Victor Oladipo. Nate McMillan really has them playing well. I've always liked Sabonis, and I'm a big fan of Miles Turner too. And he's one of the players, I think, like he's added the 3-ball to his game this year. I've always really liked him. So I think they're going to be scary when Victor Oladipo comes back. they seem like a team that's always played like really fundamentally good ball. So this is going to be interesting. And the other team is Miami, and I've really never been a Jimmy Butler fan either, but he is balling too, and they play some tenacious defense. Like we're in tough against them. It's kind of like we're almost playing a mirror image of ourselves. So I think those two teams, and then I'm kind of surprised but not surprised by Philly. I mean, Simmons hasn't managed to make another leap in his game. And now with Embiid out for, it's got to be more than 2 weeks with surgery, you got to figure they're going to be in maybe a bit of trouble. So it's going to be super interesting. But like you said, Sarah, I think, Milwaukee's obviously the front runner, and that's the way it's going to be.
I don't know. So some of the teams I'm not really worried about them. Like Philadelphia, for example, they are having a lot of internal chemistry issues where just the way that Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid are not clicking. And it's definitely affecting the team because typically when you have a big man as your star player, you need, shooters around them. And we all know that Ben Simmons, despite being told multiple times by his coach and teammates to shoot, he's not doing it. And I think that, in terms of Philly, it just really comes down to matchups. Like they match up obviously really well against Milwaukee, but might not against the others. I think it's just all going to come down to specific matchups because we've seen some inconsistencies in terms of teams, beating one team one day and then losing to the same team the other day. So I think, there's no one team that I'm looking at. Obviously, in terms of regular season, it's Milwaukee, but in terms of the playoffs, there's no one team I'm looking at as, a clear winner. I mean, everyone's saying Milwaukee Bucks, but I'm still not convinced that, they can get to the NBA finals. I don't know. Maybe I see them as more of a regular season team. But I'm not convinced yet. And then again, if they end up going against Philly, Philly matches up well against them. But then if they're against, Boston or something in the second round, Boston, they have a bit of a smaller lineup, so they might not match up. I think probably the scariest team right now for me is Miami, agreeing with Allison there. Jimmy Butler, he's just so clutch. And they've been playing really, really well. I think I'm a little traumatized too from that 2-3 zone where they had our number that one game. So yeah, it's a very tight race. Ultimately, I would like the Raptors to finish second because it looks like that's the only, other than first, obviously, which first nobody's going to catch Milwaukee, but the second seed is the only one where you can still end up playing Orlando or Brooklyn in the first round. Every other first round matchup is going to be, with the exception of obviously 1 versus 8, is going to be really tight. So yeah, I'm just hoping the Raptors finish second. They're only 2 games behind the second spot. Hopefully with all the guys coming back, we can see, them make a run. I guess I'll judge more after the AllStar break because, that's when it's going to get to crunch time and teams are going to be playing harder as well. So we'll see.
Yeah, and the Raptors have one of the easier schedules for the back half of the season. So yeah, we can see if they go on the run post All-Star break with all their, hopefully everyone healthy. I'm definitely making an assumption that once we come back, we're all here to stay. And fingers crossed that that's actually true. Sonali, anything you want to add here?
No, just going to say what Kawhi says. It's regular season. And I think I agree with both Allison and Essie. I'm hella scared of Jimmy Butler and Miami Heat. But, Milwaukee, I think my sentiment's the same, is that the Bucks are a great regular season team, but will they make it in the playoffs? Not sure. The other thing I'm really proud of is how the Eastern Conference is faring in terms of the East versus West. Because we're always talking about the West and how great the West is, but the Eastern Conference is like this, especially this year, this season. It just feels that it's just on par with the Western Conference the Western Conference teams as well too. So I know there's been a lot of discussion around that. And I will stop talking because I am, yeah.
Because that's all you have.
That's all I got.
Okay, great. Then looking at some other things that were happening around the league, and what I was going to say is the Eastern Conference is only going to get more competitive next year when Kevin Durant comes back from injury on the Brooklyn Nets. And speaking of Kevin Durant, he got into a bit of a Twitter battle with Kendrick Perkins this week. Essie, why don't you take us over there?
Yeah, so it was a very interesting battle, and unfortunately it happened on the day that Russell Westbrook, obviously that triggered it, but like the attention that Russell Westbrook got for going back to Oklahoma City and the standing ovation in a nice tribute video, it got overshadowed by this Twitter beef where Kendrick Perkins was saying that he thought that Westbrook was the best player to ever put on an Oklahoma City jersey. And I think I know what he meant, and he confirmed it after. He was trying to say that, kind of like the same way we say that Kyle Lowry is the greatest Raptor of all time, but obviously Kawhi Leonard is the most talented Raptor of all time. So anyway, I think that Kevin Durant took offense to that, and he decided to point out that because they played on the same team, that Kendrick Perkins only averaged 2 points and 3 rebounds or something like that in the playoffs. And then unfortunately, Kendrick Perkins, I think he went a little bit too far, because even like Kevin Durant put LOL there when he said that, kind of like poking fun. And then, Kendrick Perkins brings up, one of Kevin Durant's biggest insecurities of all time, which we all know is that decision to go to the 73-9 Golden State Warriors. Yes. And then that's when it just got all out of hand, and it was just like, whoa. And they were teammates too, so I think that adds a little bit of that emotional side to it. The way I see it though, I think that in terms of like who was in the right and who was in the wrong and that type of thing, I think that they were both in the wrong. I think that Kendrick Perkins, this is one of those moments that reminds us that Kendrick Perkins is actually young, despite him looking a lot older, in my opinion. But I just think he took it too far, bringing up that 73-9 Warriors decision. And I also think that Durant was a bit out of line as well. Like, he has to understand that Kendrick is now on TV. He's part of the media, and they speak on topics. They, that's their job, is to analyze and talk about players. And so he needs to separate that, this is my past teammate thing or friend. He used to be a little bit more understanding about that. So yeah, that's my take.
That's interesting. I was sort of thinking about it with respect to like professionalism, and I don't know, Sarah, maybe you might have thoughts on this as well too, but like regardless of like being a lawyer, like regardless of what my personal thoughts are about colleagues in court and outside of court, it's just like collegiality to not share, not have personal attacks towards your colleagues. And so I just thought that wasn't in good faith what they were doing. And especially if you're sharing a locker room with somebody, there's just some things you just don't air that dirty laundry out in public.
And also too, I want to say that like Kevin Durant, like it's not like Kendrick Perkins was tweeting at him directly. He was talking to somebody else. He was saying it on his own, and Kevin Durant had to like butt in and like give his 2 cents.
Okay, I agree with that, but I also, like, you would know more about this, but isn't there like something in the Twitter world where when you're like tweeting at somebody indirectly, like that's a thing? There's like a term for that, I think.
Subtweet. You're talking about a subtweet.
Subtweet.
I don't think so. I don't think he meant to purposely, shade Kevin Durant in any way. He was just in joy about the Russell Westbrook return, and he was just like, oh, reminiscing about how great Westbrook was. I don't think he meant it that way at all. But Kevin Durant, seeing as how he loves to tweet and respond to people's messages.
I don't know.
Okay, so guys, I have to jump in. I love Katie. I'm a huge fan. It's so much fun to watch him play, but the guy has such a thin skin. I mean, this is a player that had God knows how many burner accounts and was picking fights with high school kids about his own legacy on Twitter. So he's just way too sensitive. Like, dude is sensitive. He's got to let some of this stuff go. I mean, at some point, your play and your body of work has to speak for itself. He just needs to let this go. Anyway, that's my thought.
Okay, what else happened? We saw Steph Curry said something to Yanis, and it was caught on camera, and lip readers had something to say and thought they knew what he said and thought they knew what he was talking about. So Sonali, why don't you take us through that scenario?
Oh my gosh. I feel like Essie probably knows this better than I do. What did he actually say to Giannis?
So nobody knows officially.
Yeah, like there's two versions.
There's two versions. When you look at his lips, it looks like he says, "Let's do it. Come on, man." Or he says, "Let's do it, you and I." And then, so people are like, "Oh my gosh, tampering, he's trying to get Giannis." It's like, wasn't Kevin Durant enough? Now you got to take Giannis too? Like that type of thing. That's what people were saying. And then Chris Haynes from Yahoo Sports, he spoke to him about it. And Steph Curry's response was that, he was talking about the online game, the video game called PUBG. And so people are like, I don't know if I believe that, but you know how Steph Curry has this innocent halo above his head all the time. So people are like, oh, I believe it. And then some people are like, no, look what he did when he brought Durant over there. So it's like, yeah, I don't know. If he indeed said you and I instead of come on, man, then okay, that could sound more like a video game. But at the end of the day, though, them hanging out in general is still worrisome, even if they're just actually like going to a restaurant or whatever they want to do on their free time, because it's like, it's almost like a form of long-term tampering, if that makes sense, just the fact that them hanging out anyway. So I think that's why people are worried about that. Just seeing them together joking is like scary. And I will add too, I forgot to mention, Giannis's face, if you see his reaction, it doesn't look like they were talking about a video game. He was awkward. He was just like, he had this expression like, oh, you shouldn't be, I don't know, you should be talking about this right now. So I don't know. Giannis's face was saying something else.
Okay, let's switch gears back to the Raptors then and come back to a preview for this upcoming week. So we play against San Antonio on Sunday. DeMar DeRozan, our former Raptor, dearly beloved by the city, will be playing against him, followed by the Oklahoma City Thunder on Wednesday, the Wizards on Friday, and then the Timberwolves on Saturday. So we got 4 games coming up this week after a bit of a rest in our schedule, which is really nice. We anticipate Norman Powell coming back on Sunday and Pascal Siakam apparently back as early as Wednesday. So what do you guys think for this upcoming week? How will the return of these players impact our team? And what are your predictions for wins and losses? Allison.
So my heart says we're going to go 3-1. My head says we're going to go 2-2. I don't like that back-to-back. I can't see. It was OKC on Wednesday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So we have all kinds of trouble with OKC, and just they're on such a roll right now. So I can't see us winning that. And I don't like the fact that is the Minnesota game the next night?
No, it's Wizards on Friday, and
oh right, okay, that's a W. And then the Minnesota game is Saturday. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. And then as far as reintegrating the players, that's where do we start? Like we have the best possible coach for that. I mean, he's been able to explore the whole bench. He will be able to kind of mix in the returning players, but it's just for them to shake the rest off. It sounds like it's going to be Norm. Is it Norm tomorrow, and then possibly Pascal later this week or the end of the week? So yeah, I mean, we're in good shape with Nick Nurse because he should be able to to reintegrate the players, in the most optimal way.
All right, so you're going. Are you going 3-1 or 2-2? Choose.
2-2.
All right, Essie.
So I think I'm gonna go 2-2 also, and the reason being is because DeMar DeRozan, he's been playing a lot better recently, and he always plays harder against the Raptors because it's his former team. So I could see that game slipping away from us. Plus, Norm is going to be still adapting to coming back. OKC's on a roll, so I just don't think we're going to beat them. They're just too hot right now. Wizards, it can go either way. Wizards are one of those teams that I'm always still a little bit afraid of just because they have so much offensive firepower. Even though their defense sucks, their offense is really strong. But actually, I'm not sure if Bradley Beal is playing in that game.
I don't think he is.
Yeah, so okay, so we might have a chance at that one. And then Minnesota, I don't know. I know Karl Anthony Towns has been out for a bit, so I'm not sure if he's going to play there. So, okay, in that sense, you know what? I'm going to go with the 3-1 if Bradley Beal is not playing in the Washington game.
Okay, Sonali.
Yeah, I think I'm with the 2-2. I'm with the 2-2 with Allison. I think Washington's going to be a straight up win. The other three I'm not too sure about, so I'm gonna say 2-2.
All right. Well, and I guess I will once again be an optimist. I'm going to go for sure 3-1 with the possibility of actually going 4-0 over these games. If we look, OKC is the only game with the only team with a winning percentage, and the Raptors have done very, very well against teams with losing records. They've only lost one game this season. So San Antonio, the Wizards, and the Timberwolves all have records below 500. I am really curious about the return of the players. I mean, as we know, this is a lot of this is really a game of matchups, and 3 of these teams are Western Conference teams. We don't necessarily see them a lot, and as we bring our players back, I'm just really curious about what Nick will do in terms of matching up our players. And there are a lot of players who really earned minutes over this injury stretch, and to see some of them obviously not play, it'll be interesting. I wonder how it'll affect the team dynamic. Although I'm not too concerned about the team, morale as a whole. I really get that this is a team, and each player is willing to play whatever role is offered to them at that time. So, but I'm going to go with a solid 3-1 this week, and maybe even a undefeated week. So there we go. The eternal optimist. Here we go. All right. So does anyone else have any final comments before we sign off?
I don't have a basketball related comment, but I just wanted to send my thoughts and prayers to all the families of the victims that were in that horrific air crash on the airplane crash for the Ukrainian airline that was flying to Tehran. Just a lot of Canadians that were lost in that flight, and just really have been thinking about them, and my heart breaks for them and their families.
Yeah.
Thanks for the somber reminder. Absolutely. I know the Iranian community in Canada is huge and vital, and contributes so much to being here. Sonali, you and I went to university and had so many Iranian friends in our community, definitely feeling the impact of that, and recognizing the contribution that that country actually makes to ours. So,
Definitely.
yeah. All right. So on that note, everybody be safe. Keep your friends and your families close, and have a good week. We will return next week for more Raptors content. Reminder to follow us on Twitter at Raptor Queens, and you can subscribe to all our podcasts from Buzzsprout, Spotify, Apple, and then there are a couple others. What are they, Essie?
Stitcher, and soon we're going to be on iHeartRadio as well as Google coming soon.
Excellent. So be sure to subscribe, and we will catch you all next week. Cheers, everyone. Bye.